Washington State, whether a permit is required for a water heater replacement depends on certain factors. Generally, a permit is not required if the new water heater is of the same size and capacity as the old one, the existing electrical wiring and gas piping are in good condition and do not need to be modified, and the installation meets all applicable code requirements. According to the National Electrical Code, a water heater is typically classified as utilization equipment. Utilization equipment is defined as equipment that converts electrical energy into another form of energy, such as heat. Regarding electrical work, Washington state regulations stipulate that only licensed electricians are allowed to perform electrical work. This includes the installation of new wiring and flex for a water heater. However, there's an exception for minor electrical repairs that can be performed by non-electricians. These minor electrical repairs include tasks such as replacing a light bulb or ballast, replacing a receptacle or switch, installing a new light fixture or ceiling fan if no new wiring is required, and replacing a water heater heating element if no new wiring is required. Concerning circuit requirements, the installation of a new water heater on an existing 20-amp circuit may violate Washington Administrative Code 296.46b80. This code section generally requires water heaters rated at 1200 watts or more to be installed on a 30-amp circuit. In conclusion, replacing a water heater with an identical unit generally would not require a permit. However, if any new wiring or flex is installed, a licensed electrician must perform the work. The installation must comply with the requirement for a 30-amp circuit for water heaters rated at 1200 watts or more. Therefore, to reiterate the important points, firstly, you must determine if a permit is required. Secondly, ensure that all electrical work is performed by a licensed electrician unless it falls under the definition of a minor electrical repair. Thirdly, verify that the circuit size is appropriate for the water heater's wattage rating. When determining if a permit is needed, it is important to consider the scope of the work. If the replacement is like for like, meaning the new water heater is the same size, capacity, and electrical requirements as the old one, and the existing wiring and piping are in good condition, a permit may not be necessary. However, if any modifications to the electrical or plumbing systems are required, a permit is likely needed. This helps ensure that the work is done safely and complies with local codes. Secondly, when it comes to electrical work, it is crucial to understand the regulations regarding who can perform electrical tasks. In many jurisdictions, only licensed electricians are allowed to perform new electrical installations or modifications. This is because electrical work can be dangerous if not done properly, and licensed electricians have the training and experience to ensure that it is done safely and in compliance with codes. However, there are often exceptions for minor electrical repairs which may be performed by homeowners or other qualified individuals. These repairs typically include tasks like replacing a light switch or outlet, but do not include more complex tasks like running new wiring. Thirdly, the circuit size is a critical consideration when installing a new water heater. Water heaters draw a significant amount of power, and if they are connected to an undersized circuit, it can create a fire hazard. Most codes require water heaters to be installed on a dedicated circuit of the appropriate size. This means that the circuit should only serve the water heater and should be protected by a circuit breaker or fuse of the correct amperage. For example, a water heater that draws 12 amps should be installed on a 20-amp circuit. In the NEC, utilization equipment encompasses a broad range of devices. It's crucial to understand this classification as it dictates the applicable safety standards and installation requirements. Electric water heaters, being energy conversion devices, fall squarely under this category. Firstly, the NEC provides specific guidelines for wiring and overcurrent protection for utilization equipment. These guidelines ensure safety and prevent electrical hazards. Secondly, local codes often incorporate or reference the NEC, making compliance essential for legal and safe installations. Understanding these nuances is crucial for inspectors and installers alike. When replacing a water heater, the permit requirements can vary depending on the specifics of the installation. Firstly, if the replacement is a like-for-like swap, with no changes to the electrical or plumbing systems, a permit might not be required. Secondly, any alterations to the existing wiring or plumbing, even minor ones, may trigger the need for a permit. Thirdly, local jurisdictions often have their own specific rules, so it's always best to check with the local permitting office. The role of a licensed electrician in water heater installation is paramount. Firstly, they ensure the electrical connections are made safely and correctly, minimizing the risk of fire or shock. Secondly, they can verify that the existing wiring is adequate for the new water heater's power requirements. Thirdly, they are familiar with the NEC and local codes, ensuring compliance and safety. When addressing the 20 amp circuit violation, the WAC 296.46b-80 clearly states the requirements for water heater circuit sizing. Firstly, water heaters rated at 1200 watts or more typically require a 30 amp dedicated circuit. Secondly, using an existing 20 amp circuit can overload the circuit, leading to overheating and potential fire hazards. Thirdly, upgrading the circuit to 30 amps or higher is necessary to comply with the code and ensure safe operation. Firstly, when replacing a water heater, it's essential to ensure that the new unit is compatible with the existing electrical and plumbing systems. Secondly, if the new water heater has different power requirements, the electrical circuit may need to be upgraded to handle the increased load. Thirdly, it's also important to check the plumbing connections to ensure they are compatible with the new water heater. In Washington State, the Department of Labor and Industries L&I enforces electrical codes and regulations. Firstly, L&I provides resources and information on electrical safety and permitting requirements. Secondly, they conduct inspections to ensure compliance with electrical codes. Thirdly, L&I also offers training and licensing programs for electricians. The NEC defines utilization equipment as equipment that utilizes electrical energy for mechanical, chemical, heating, lighting, or similar purposes. Firstly, this definition encompasses a wide range of devices, from small appliances to large industrial machines. Secondly, understanding this definition is important for determining the applicable safety standards and installation requirements. Thirdly, the NEC provides specific guidelines for wiring and overcurrent protection for utilization equipment. When replacing a water heater, it's important to consider the following factors. Firstly, the size and capacity of the new water heater should be appropriate for the household's needs. Secondly, the energy efficiency of the new water heater can impact energy costs. Thirdly, the warranty and lifespan of the new water heater are important considerations. The role of an electrical inspector is to ensure that electrical installations comply with codes and standards. Firstly, they review permit applications and plans to ensure that the proposed work meets code requirements. Secondly, they conduct on-site inspections to verify that the work is done correctly and safely. Thirdly, they issue certificates of approval once the work is completed and meets all requirements. When addressing the 20 amp circuit violation, there are several steps that need to be taken. Firstly, the existing 20 amp circuit needs to be disconnected and a new 30 amp circuit needs to be installed. Secondly, a new circuit should be wired with appropriately sized conductors and protected by a 30 amp circuit breaker. Thirdly, the new circuit should be clearly labeled as a dedicated circuit for the water heater. It is critical to understand that improperly sized circuits are a major cause of electrical fires. Firstly, overloaded circuits can overheat and cause the insulation on the wires to melt or break down. Secondly, this can lead to short circuits and arcing, which can ignite nearby materials. Thirdly, using the correct circuit size and overcurrent protection is essential for preventing electrical fires. When it comes to electrical safety, it is always best to err on the side of caution. Firstly, if you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to hire a licensed electrician. Secondly, always disconnect power before working on any electrical equipment. Thirdly, use the proper tools and equipment for the job. In conclusion, replacing a water heater involves a combination of plumbing and electrical work. Firstly, it's important to understand the permit requirements in your jurisdiction. Secondly, electrical work should be performed by a licensed electrician unless it falls under the definition of a minor electrical repair. Thirdly, the circuit size must be appropriate for the water heater's wattage rating. Always ensure compliance with applicable codes and regulations to ensure a safe and efficient installation. It is also important to consider the long-term cost savings of installing an energy-efficient water heater. Firstly, energy-efficient water heaters can significantly reduce energy consumption and lower utility bills. Secondly, many utility companies offer rebates and incentives for installing energy-efficient appliances. Thirdly, the initial cost of an energy-efficient water heater may be higher, but the long-term savings can outweigh the initial investment. When selecting a new water heater, it's important to consider the different types of water heaters available. Firstly, tankless water heaters provide hot water on demand and can save energy compared to traditional tank water heaters. Secondly, heat pump water heaters use electricity to transfer heat from one place to another, making them more energy efficient than traditional electric water heaters. Thirdly, solar water heaters use solar energy to heat water, which can significantly reduce energy costs. In addition to the WAC and NEC, local codes and regulations may also apply to water heater installations. Firstly, it's important to check with your local building department to determine if there are any additional requirements. Secondly, local codes may address issues such as seismic bracing, backflow prevention, and venting requirements. Thirdly, complying with all applicable codes and regulations is essential for ensuring a safe and compliant installation. When working with electricity, it's important to use the proper personal protective equipment or PPE. Firstly, wear safety glasses to protect your eyes from flying debris. Secondly, wear rubber gloves to protect your hands from electrical shock. Thirdly, wear insulated boots to protect your feet from electrical shock. It's also important to inspect the existing wiring and plumbing systems before installing a new water heater. Firstly, check the wiring for any signs of damage, such as frayed insulation or loose connections. Secondly, check the plumbing for any leaks or corrosion. Thirdly, address any issues before installing the new water heater to prevent future problems. When making electrical connections, it's important to use the proper wiring methods and connectors. Firstly, use appropriately sized conductors for the circuit amperage. Secondly, use approved connectors for making wire-to-wire connections. Thirdly, ensure that all connections are tight and secure. When installing a water heater, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully. Firstly, read the installation manual thoroughly before starting the installation. Secondly, follow the recommended procedures for connecting the water heater to the electrical and plumbing systems. Thirdly, perform all necessary tests and inspections after the installation is complete. It's also important to properly ground the water heater to protect against electrical shock. Firstly, connect the water heater's grounding wire to a properly grounded electrical panel. Secondly, ensure that the grounding connection is tight and secure. Thirdly, test the grounding connection to verify that it is working properly. When working with gas piping, it's important to follow all safety precautions. Firstly, never work on gas piping while the gas is turned on. Secondly, use a gas leak detector to check for leaks after making any connections. Thirdly, if you smell gas, evacuate the area immediately and call the gas company. When installing a new water heater, it's important to properly insulate the unit to reduce heat loss. Firstly, wrap the water heater with an insulation blanket. Secondly, insulate the hot water pipes to prevent heat loss. Thirdly, seal any gaps or cracks around the water heater to prevent air leaks. It's also important to properly vent the water heater to prevent the buildup of carbon monoxide. Firstly, ensure that the vent pipe is properly connected to the water heater and the chimney. Secondly, inspect the vent pipe for any leaks or obstructions. Thirdly, install a carbon monoxide detector in the area where the water heater is located. When installing a tankless water heater, it's important to consider the gas or electrical requirements. Firstly, tankless water heaters require a larger gas line or electrical circuit than traditional tank water heaters. Secondly, ensure that the gas line or electrical circuit is properly sized to handle the tankless water heater's requirements. Thirdly, consult with a qualified plumber or electrician to determine the appropriate size and specifications. When installing a solar water heater, it's important to consider the location of the solar panels. Firstly, the solar panels should be installed in a location that receives direct sunlight for most of the day. Secondly, the solar panels should be angled properly to maximize solar energy absorption. Thirdly, consult with a qualified solar installer to determine the best location and angle for the solar panels. It's also important to properly maintain your water heater to ensure its longevity and efficiency. Firstly, flush the water heater regularly to remove sediment buildup. Secondly, inspect the water heater for any leaks or corrosion. Thirdly, replace the inner rod every few years to prevent corrosion of the tank. When it comes to water heater replacements in electrical work, adhering to the code and the safety of the job is always the priority, and the advice in this audio narration is not a substitution for an electrician.